welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, and on today's episode we are very, very excited to talk all things Gorse with Sam K. Horton. Hello Sam,
Hello.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Now, we were just talking off camera about you lived in London for quite a while as well, so what's it like to be back?
It's really lovely. So I live in Cornwall now.
Yes.
Which is about as far away from London as you can get, in all aspects really. But it's really lovely. I love living in London, so it's lovely to come back and find it just as busy and dirty and wonderful and weird as it ever was.
Yeah.
I think it's really nice that it changes loads. Everything, all the shops change, all the restaurants change, but the kind of core sort of everything else stays the same. Like there's always something odd happening.
Yes.
Quite close to where you are.
Yes.
That warrants further inspection.
Yes.
So I've had a lovely walk in this morning, sort of spotting places that I've done appalling things whilst a teenager, and but now look much nicer, and
Oh yeah, that's fine. Do you find yourself as well, the longer you're here, like you suddenly start reverting back to kind of, I suppose, London way, so you start tutting at people when they stop in the street?
Absolutely. You stop smiling, you stop waving. Yeah, absolutely. My walking pace increases by several miles an hour. Yeah. When I got here, I still had the kind of West Country smiling and waving for a good few minutes, and then it goes just very quickly.
Oh yeah.
When you get like the second or third, like truly disgusted look, you stop.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
It's so peculiar because I'm originally from the Midlands, so it's obviously like very like, hi, okay, no.
Nobody wants that.
Hello to no.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about your fantastic. Oh, it's so good. For everyone out there, you need to read this. So kind of spoiler-free elevator pitch.
Sure. So it is a historical fantasy set in Cornwall in the 1780s, and it is about a village on Bodmin Moor, so the North Cornwall moors, and I guess the elevator pitch is a space where folklore and all of those stories are real. They exist in the world, but not everybody believes in them still. There's a sort of change coming. The church is in the village as well. There's a tension between those two things, and there's a character called Pell, who is a keeper who traditionally has been in charge of keeping the sort of fey spirits in check and mediating between them and the people in the village. But people keep dying, and something is to blame. And so the book is about finding out who that is and why, and reconciling all of those tensions.
It's such an interesting book because it works on so many different levels. So you have the kind of the mystery element that's almost like a kind of like a police procedure in a way. It's just like we're being called to the next, like suspicious death over here. I made a note putting the Midsummer in Midsummer Murders.
Yes,
which...
excellent.
So, how did kind of all the, I suppose, separate ideas, how did they all kind of come together?
I think it's interesting, speaking to you today, because I think comic books did play a big part in where I came at this from. So I'm a huge Hellboy fan, and I really wanted to write a paranormal detective of some variety. And so initially, Pell was all about Pell. It was just going to be old guy solving problems, solving
Constantine.
crimes. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so as far as I was concerned, that's what I was going to do. And I live above the moor, so it didn't even feel like a choice that's where it would be. And I'm a visual artist as well, and all my work in the last few years has been around folklore, and especially Cornish folklore. So that's what I knew, so I wrote what I knew. And then it was a surprise, really, the plot. So I'm not a planner at all. Nothing is... I'm getting better at planning, but broadly I don't plan anything. So I was writing what I thought was this story about Pell, and then the character of Nancy just kind of turned up and changed everything. And so that, I guess, is how it all happened. And everything else kind of just fell into place. And the decisions that came after that were just what felt natural, what felt like had to happen.
Because you do very kind of comic book style, you do get the origin story of like Pell and Nancy like fairly early on in the book. Where did that kind of origin story come from? Especially Pell's, just the whole thing about, I don't try not to like do too many spoilers for people out there. But was it important to kind of, have these almost, especially Pell, like a very well established character who's clearly keeping secrets and stuff, but how important is that to have that fully
Yes, Pell especially. I think I knew him really well. I think it's tricky, isn't it? There's edge round spoilers, but the place that Pell comes from,
yes,
is something that I've explored. Is a place that I created previous to the book. So in my working practice, I created an island, and that island is called Ethin, which is Cornish for Gorse. And so I knew that island really well.
Yes.
And so I was really keen to have somebody from that island in the book. And so he was very established. And I kind of wanted to hint at that. And there's lots of mysteries around where he comes from that are kind of teased and some are explained and some aren't. And yeah, I've always liked reading media where you find out a little bit about where people come from. I think for me it really helps characterization. Like, it's nice to know what has led them to that point, just a little bit. And yeah, so Pell was kind of ready and made, and Nancy, I was just really interested. So it was just fun to kind of imagine where she came from, what she did.
Because weirdly enough as well, Nancy kind of gives me, and there's almost some kind of Philip Pullman style vibes as well, that you have, I suppose, the next kind of generation kind of coming up and their kind of story and how they're going to kind of change things. Where did the idea of Nancy come from for you?
I think it was really interesting to have a character that was going to be, because Pell feels very old school, and a lot of the problems in the book stem from that kind of intractable, refusing to change how you're going to do things. So I think it was nice to bring in Nancy and think about sort of, like in all aspects, like still going on in life, the things that happen where you have institutions that get a fresh pair of eyes or a fresh person in charge, and the kind of difficulties and benefits that brings. And so I think bringing Nancy in as a character who was going to be fighting against all of these things and trying to do better, just felt like quite a contemporary thing to write about. And I think, she's younger, she is not an old man. She's got a lot of fresh ideas. The way her relationship with the people in the village and the spirits on the moor is much more sort of harmonious than Pell. And so I guess it's always fun throwing in like something that's completely counter to the status quo, and I think that's what she does.
Definitely. And the kind of, I suppose, the folklore nature, and the looking at kind of like superstitions and even the kind of old wives' tales of doing certain things. Would you say you're a superstitious person? Or?
No, I always say that I'm sort of like an optimistic skeptic. Like I would really like to believe in all these things, but I don't really. But I love stories, and I love understanding why we tell stories. I think for me, superstitions and folklore, and kind of understanding the purpose of those stories, like why are we telling those stories? Because most of the time with folklore and superstition, there's a good reason for it. We've needed to keep people away from this dangerous bit of moor. We've needed you to not go and do that. It's very dangerous to go and do this over here. And it's really interesting to me that sort of humans' brains are wired to kind of take in stories much better than you do. Just don't go over there. If you tell somebody, don't go over there because there's this, those lights are actually piskies and they'll lead you astray and you'll end up in the fairy world and that sticks much better. And so it was really interesting to explore like the purpose of those stories and bring them into the book and sort of give it more of a tangible risk, but kind of bring to the fore the reasons you told those stories in the first place.
And you have kind of as well at the start of each chapter, you've obviously got the different kind of plants and foliage and stuff kind of named in the world, so it's very kind of all encompassing that you feel that you're absolutely there. How important is that to kind of, it's almost, that's a character in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was what was important to me. I think, I live pretty much on the moor, walk the dog there daily, and it has got such a unique character and such a unique space that when I was writing it just felt very important to try and get across sort of as holistically as possible, like what it feels to be on the moor and what the moor feels like as an entity, because it does feel like an entity. Having said I'm not superstitious, I do kind of feel that there is like a tangible sense of personality about the moor, and I think it's really interesting, especially in Cornwall, where you have like the western part of the county in West Penwith, which is also moorland landscape, but it is a very different personality to North Cornwall moors, and so it was important to me to root the book really heavily in that space. And so things like the names of the wildflowers, I had a book of I think it's from the 1700s of sort of flora study, And so I was looking at plants that may not exist there anymore, but existed at the time. And so even if you don't know what those flowers are, I think hearing the names and imagining what they look like, it just gives you such a great tie to the landscape. And so throughout the book, it's definitely in my thoughts as a character that's present in the scene alongside the characters, and often has something to say or something to sort of put into the scene as well as them.
Very, very cool. And you said before about your artistic endeavours. Have you got I'm imagining whole sketchbooks full of like the different kind of fae and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I sort of, I do. I definitely have ideas of what these things look like, and I have got sketches. But it's interesting. I think I often surprise myself writing it. They didn't always appear the way I'd expect them to. It was interesting. I've always found it really interesting. What I would do visually has not been what I've done with writing, and I think I found out quite interesting how, often the book will go, no, actually, it's not how they look. You know, it's great you've drawn that, but actually, no, that's not what they look like at all. And it's been really interesting talking to people who read the book about how they see those creatures. And that's been really fascinating to me, like what springs to people's minds when they see them.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you are kind of influenced by other media and how you kind of, I suppose, come across fae in other kind of books and films, etc. What was really interesting is obviously there's been a huge wave more recently of romantasy and kind of the fae being a more kind of like, oh, he's a hot fae prince, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This I loved because it was just so like dark and tricksy, and there wasn't that kind of, I don't know, not that it's a crutch as such, but that, you know, that you're having to kind of romanticize or like the whole Twilight thing with vampires, right? How important is that kind of dark gothic side to
it's definitely really important. I think for the media that I've consumed has always been fairly like darker gothic, classic literature, contemporary literature, contemporary comics and films and things. And also, if you read the folk tales, if you read there's various drollers and folk story collectors who've compiled these books in the sort of 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. They're dark stories. You know, they don't. And Cornwall is quite a brutal landscape. It doesn't leave a lot of space for anything soft. And I think it again, going back to kind of what these tales are about, they're warnings mostly. You know, these aren't creatures broadly that have your best interests at heart. You know, there's definitely characters in the folk tales where you can, if you do something for them, if you leave them some food, if you ask them really, really nicely, they might not hurt you, and sometimes they might help you. But it didn't really. It felt natural to make them kind of hard-edged. And, you know, there are characters in the book, you know, the brownies and the house spirits, who are kind of a softer aspect of it. But even they have a kind of dark side if you cross them. And it just felt natural to make that world one to be wary of rather than one to embrace. If you find them attractive, go for it. I mean, you know.
I understand your way.
If that's your thing, that's great. But not kill consciously. Yeah.
So we're at Forbidden Planet. We're sister companies with Titan Books and Titan Comics, and they've had some kind of great, really dark kind of fae books. So just thinking about Trip Gailey's book from last year, and also Tori Bovolino's kind of most recent book. What other books or other media has influenced Gorse?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So apart from the actual folk tales, I think. Yeah, comic books, like the Hellboy comics, have been a big influence as well. As it's going to test me remembering who actually wrote all of these things. But comic book series like Harrow County, that kind of darker, quite folkloric edge, and the ones, I think what are they called? The Once books, the retelling of the Arthur legends.
Right, yes.
Maybe Kieran Gillen?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes. Yes.
So that sort of stuff from a comic book world sort of aspect has really influenced it. And I think sort of broader media, we've had like in a really good position of sort of horror and horror adjacent media at the moment. So you have like all the Mike Flanagan stuff on Netflix, which has all got that kind of ghosty, monstery, but kind of with the kind of human stories threaded through it. So that's definitely had an impact on it. Sort of fiction-wise, like Ben Meyer's early work has been a real influence, and Susanna Clarke's work, like Pure and Easy, Adore, and Strange and Norrell. It's just that kind of, that kind of darker sort of fairy tale stuff has been a real
It's
on it.
the anniversary this year of Jonathan. You know when people just like, oh, it's this year it was published, you're just like,
I know. And the books they're bringing out look so beautiful.
oh my god,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I'm currently kind of working on MCM and our Christmas catalogue and stuff, and you just like spend like 20 minutes just looking at a cover because it's so pretty, and you're just like, oh shit, I've got other stuff to do today other than look at this pretty cover. So we can also obviously talk about the gorgeous art direction. Obviously we spoke a bit off camera, but the cover and the kind of the internal kind of little images and stuff. So how important was that for the whole kind of package?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all lying, aren't we, if we say we're not influenced by the book cover. I mean, it's a lovely sentiment, but we judge them by them. And so it was important to me. You know, I come from a visual arts background. The look was always going to be something that meant a lot. And I was just delighted. When the artist came back with the work, it is just exactly what I'd hoped for. You know, and I think it was important to me that it didn't look too kind of soft and fairy tale-y. And I just love everything about it. I'm really glad that the flowers play a part throughout the books. There's lovely little illustrations that have been made of a couple of the flowers that I mentioned. And I feel I've got a lot of lovely people mentioning the cover, and I think it sells the book really well. I think it gives you a good idea of what's inside.
There's a certain kind of quietness to it which I really, really enjoy, because the book obviously it does pack I didn't expect it at first, and then something happens fairly early on, and then I'm just like, oh, I'm in. Sold. We just have to kind of mention as well, like coming towards the end of the interview, that your prose is so beautiful. It's so kind of rich. Like where did the writing process start for you? Is this because this is your first book?
First book.
But have you got like a few manuscripts hidden away?
No. So I always feel vaguely embarrassed about this because it's very recent. It's very visual art. My last art project was making the island. So I was making Ethin, and I mapped it. If you go on my Instagram, you can find the maps. I've done some satellite maps. I've done all sorts of things for the island. You can follow the trust, which I set up to create the sort of fictional backstory. And what I realised was that it's all very well doing all these images, but again, going back to what we need as people, we need stories, and the island needed some stories. So I started writing the history of the island just as part of that art project. Initially just little sort of tags that would go under a fictional display of these artefacts. And I just really loved it. And the more I wrote, the more I realised that actually I was enjoying that more than creating the visual work. And you know, I've always been a sort of voracious reader who's, if you left a book near me, it'll be read. Doesn't matter what it is. I used to stay at my grandparents' house, and they had my aunt's bookshelf, and so I'd read through Julie Cooper novels, and I'd read through Pony Club novels, and then there'd be a biography of Peter Ustinov, and I'd read that too. As long as there was a book, I was happy. So I've always read, and weirdly, it never really occurred to me to write. But I found myself really enjoying it, and so I think in 2019, I wrote a little collection of folk tales of Ethin, and put those out and got some lovely feedback, which was, this is all very nice. It's not a book, but it's very nice. And then I wrote Gorse, and it just sort of arrived. It's changed a lot since the first bit. There's been lots of edits and lots of things, but it really did kind of just arrive. And I found that what I love about writing is that I can get closer to what's in my head with words than I managed to get with drawing or painting. And it just felt very satisfying to be able to finally get out these images that I had. And so, now it's the thing I want to do, all the time.
It's so interesting. I was listening to a podcast on the way to work today, and talking about the idea of, for example, with horror, to hook someone into a book is a lot more difficult than a film, because quite often, say you go to the cinema, you have the whole thing of you're in a room with strangers. You know, you can't quite see properly. There's shadows kind of in the background, and therefore the kind of tension. And to kind of do that in a book is actually quite a lot more difficult. It's a whole other kind of, I suppose, set of skills. But I can't believe this is. I mean, yeah, it's amazing. So what's the plans for the next book?
Well, so the next book, so Ragwort, which will be the sequel to Gorse, will be out next year. And that is pretty much a continuation. So it's hinted at the end of Gorse where that goes, and so that's the story we'll be telling in that. And then after that, who knows? I've got a big drawer full of projects. I've got a lot of things I want to write about. Maybe some vampires at some point. Yeah.
But not Twilight.
Not Twilight, no.
Good.
Teddy boy vampires, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. It's very
okay.
It's niche, but I'm hoping it's got broad appeal.
I don't know, we could sell it. We can work on that. And to finish the interview today, so what are you currently reading, watching, and if you game, what are you playing?
So, at the moment I'm reading my Solaris sibling, Lorraine Wilson's forthcoming novel, We All Ghosts in the Forest, which is just such an excellent concept. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a sort of future dystopia where the internet has been reduced to ghosts. And it's so good, really interesting. And I'm about halfway through, and I'm just loving it. So that's what I'm reading. I do game. Currently, I'm on about my third playthrough of Baldur's Gate. I think everybody else in the country. Fool that I am. I haven't started Baldur's Gate 3 yet, but I have a deal that after MCM, I'm clearing the decks currently of some games I'm like part of the way through. And I'm starting Baldur's Gate 3, and obviously the voice cast there at MCM. So I'm hoping I can get some words of encouragement before I go in. It's very and it will destroy all productivity.
Yes,
of any kind.
This is the thing. It's
No, I resisted for a year and then bought it a few months ago, and it's great. Yeah, so I'm doing a lovely evil run at the moment, which is harder than I thought it would be actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So that once you've done the sort of full run and you've done your sort of canonical.
Yes.
Getting to know the characters, right? It's much harder to do things than to impact them. They wasn't expecting it.
You care too much.
Yeah, exactly. What am I watching at the moment? I've just finished For the House of Usher, which got back onto Netflix, and so thought I'd have to watch that finally, which is such a beautiful thing. Just love his sort of again like gothic sort of decadent sort of horror stuff. And Chaos, we just started Chaos, which has been
I need to go into
really
it.
good.
It
Yeah.
I mean anything that guy
Absolutely. But no, it's just it's a perfect TV show.
Yeah. There is another, obviously there's so many platforms and stuff now. It's kind of crazy to keep track, but when you do find something that kind of I found recently that a lot of horror films are being watched in installments in the gym. So I've been, it's been a new discovery that I can get on a bike or a treadmill and just watch like half an hour of whatever's around. It's like just do little horror installments. My partner won't watch horror, so so I need she's like no we can't be watching anything terrifying. So I need to be away from her. So the gym has been a nice space to watch. I thought I was weird because I do horror podcasts on my like runs and stuff. So I'll be like, it's 45 minutes, so it's a perfect but horror, I think I'd get too distracted.
I quite like it because it just takes your mind off whatever boring exercise you're doing.
Yeah. The pain is real on so many.
Exactly. It makes the heart rate spike occasionally. But
oh God. Any particular films? Like, what are you currently?
It's a weird. I don't know if I've just finished watching the Five Nights at Freddy film actually, which I'm not going to necessarily sort of cover with plaudits, but it was a good. Yes. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was.
Have you seen the Nick Cage
No, I really want to. I really want to. And it is on my list. As soon as it arrives on a platform that I can watch it on, it will be watched. Yeah.
That's a definite gym film.
Yeah. I've heard such wonderfully varied things about it that things you can't really lose in Nick Cage films, right? Because it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. It's going to be wonderful.
It's him being him.
Exactly. Yeah.
So therefore, it's going to be great.
Yeah, completely.
Well, thank you, Sam, so much for joining us today. For anyone out there who's intrigued, we're going to have signed copies winging their way to our stores very soon after this interview. And just click the link below for more interviews and to grab yourself a signed copy. But we will see you very soon. Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.